All right, well, I'll call the meeting to order. And 7:01, according to my clock here. So public hearings, we have a notice of intent, stormwater management permit, 26 Meadow Lane, map 56, lot 14, construct a flexible development with a with the 3 single-family units and 1 duplex unit. This has been continued. Is that right, Melissa?
Correct. Yep. We have not received any revised plans, so they've asked a continuance to our next meeting, which is on the 23rd.
Okay. Do I need to read the legal notice or?
You're
No?
okay.
All right. So this has been continued to the 23rd. Do I hear a motion to accept the continuation request?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor by a roll call vote?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes. Okay. So we have to wait till 7:10, so we'll do newer continued business. So we have requests for certificate of compliance, 0 Marlborough Road, stormwater management permit, FY 24-2, St. Mark's parking lot.
Yes, so we sent this for a follow-up review to Fuss and O'Neill as part of the stormwater management permit, and they came back with 0 comments. So all has been installed per plan, is functioning. Everything seems to be on par with what we approved. So I recommend issuing a complete COC for the stormwater management permit, and we will include the ongoing O&M as part of that document that gets recorded.
Okay, any conversation comments?
No.
No. All right. Excuse me, do I hear a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I saw that you had sent out the 2024 annual report, Melissa.
Yes, it's pretty almost exact to what we have every year. I did change around the format a little bit, and I updated our kind of the area subject to jurisdiction just to reword it a little bit more clearly than it has been in the past. And then I added all of our permits just at the end instead of kind of in the middle, but that's the only real changes to this year's annual report. And I put in there a blurb about the dump as well.
The activity at Breakneck Hill.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Did anybody have any comments? Did you have a chance to read it?
I took a look through and it looks great. It looks great.
Liz said no.
I've not read it.
Okay.
I'm
Busy
sure,
week.
I'm sure it looks great. I've not read it.
Okay. Kevin, any commentary on it or?
No, I think it's great. I liked that we got the new community garden coordinator mentioned in there, so that was wonderful. And other than that, it looks wonderful.
What's the deadline for this, Melissa?
I think it was before our next meeting, which is why I wanted to get it on. Let me double check.
Okay.
Yeah, it's January 17th.
I can take a look at it now.
It's a pretty easy read.
I hate to say it doesn't change much throughout the years.
Yeah.
Really, 29 public hearings?
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah. We had a lot more COCs than I had thought we did originally too. I forget what it was from the year before, but we did have a little bit of an increase, even though it didn't feel like it per se.
Hmm.
I don't know about you guys. It didn't feel like it to me, but
All right. It's a pretty quick read.
Wow.
Well, it's like a page and a paragraph, and then it just lists all the properties. So
yeah.
It did.
I'm not going to be able to validate any of those anyway. Trust Melissa on that. So it's true.
How many books do you rip through like in the summertime? 400?
I just looked at my thing for the year. It was like 220, but it's a mix of audio and reading. So
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have any comments. I thought it looked great, Melissa, so. Do we need to take a vote?
It's totally up to you. As long as you guys are okay, then I will submit this to the select board's office.
Yeah.
Submit.
Yep, I think we'll give you a thumbs up.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay. Good job. Thank you for doing that.
Keeps me honest.
Us as well. Let's see, we have 2 minutes. Probably can't cover item 3 and 4 in 2 minutes.
I can do a quick update on the farm dump if you'd like. That's pretty status quo.
Okay, yeah.
So we have temporary stabilization through the winter that's being completed. The only last thing is we're working out if we want to just put straw down or the contractor wants to use a little bit of a combination of a tackifier. So working that out with TRC only because we have to do some groundwater sampling and making sure the tackifier doesn't impact those samples at all. But it would be cost savings about 6,000 if we use that versus the straw. So it sounds like that'll be done next Tuesday. And then the upcoming stabilization and restoration plan we should have by middle of February. I think by the end of January is probably more reasonable. So we'll be able to review that, make comments as well as stewardship committee to get that done in the spring when it's time. So that's kind of keeping on track with below budget as well. You know, the contractor and the engineer company have been great and keeping on top of anything, especially with the weird weather we've had with the rain, etc. So all looks well, and any samples that we've taken thus far have come back clean, no reportable levels of anything, which have been great. So it looks like our final, restoration activities will be simple stabilization, planting, and we won't necessarily have any ongoing restrictions or have to be part of the mass contingency plan at all because we don't have any of those reportable levels. So all looks good on that front. I'm very happy with the analytical results that have come back so far.
Good, good. Anybody have any questions?
Oh,
No, okay. All right, 7:10. So public hearing, notice of intent, 120 Turnpike Road, map 37, lot 120-4, construction of a 60-unit apartment building. Also continued
Yes.
to January 23rd.
Yep.
All right, do I hear a motion to issue the continuance?
so moved.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor?
Lulick,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes. All right, that concludes the public hearings for the night. Let me see, newer continued business, Chestnut Hill Farm update.
Yeah, so both Melissa and I attended the meeting in the Deerfoot Barn, hosted by trustees of reservations to give us an update on what's going on with respect to the pause in farming activities. And there was some great news, which is that they're going to be resuming farming activities. And the way they plan to do that is by having an actual tenant farmer rather than trying to operate the farm themselves. It sounds like a wonderful idea. The trustees is a great open space management organization. They're very good at what they do. I think trying to take on the farming as well, might have been a little bit of a reach. There's just too much going on. So to have one person this is their profession, who focuses on it, I think has a much greater chance of success. So that was great to hear. It sounds like they're going to be going out to, well, they're calling it going out to bid. It's sort of a lengthy process. They're working with an organization called, oh gosh, Melissa, do you remember Land for
Land for Good.
Land for Good, that helps connect property owners with farmers and farmers with property owners. And the woman who came from that organization sounded very knowledgeable. They're going to try to find folks who are interested and try to find a good fit for the farm and the community, and working with the trustees. So we talked a little bit about, we're sort of hopeful that before they go out to bid, they'll put together some sort of prospectus to give to, interested parties. It would probably be helpful to everybody involved if they, also gave a copy of that to the commission, just to make sure, we don't want to have to come in afterwards if there's something that just won't work. Let's identify it up front. They're not in any way bound to do that, but hopefully they'll see the wisdom in it. I think it'd be just make the process go more smoothly for everybody. So so that was some very good news. So in other news, there were a number of people there, one of whom was Al Hamilton, who's been an active supporter of the trustees on the property, I think, as we all know. And he and I chatted for a while, and he said that he had met with town council to talk about the CR. And I want to make sure I get this right. He said that town council told him that essentially there are no CR police, and that if the town chooses not to enforce the CR, there's no comeback from that. The town can effectively ignore parts of it, and we won't get in any trouble. I think his goal is to remove what he sees as roadblocks within the CR that are making it, I think, in his mind, difficult for the trustees to make farming work in the property. He, being somewhat of a farmer himself, really wants farming to take place. Let's see. I haven't met with town council. I wouldn't do that without talking with the commission first, but to hear it, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Because I think what we would end up doing if the commission, and I don't know that there's any appetite in the commission to do this, but if we did choose to ignore parts of the CR, it's not that there are no CR police. It's that the enforcement of it, if we failed in our responsibility, would then fall to other stakeholders who would have standing to take it to court. And just to make sure I had an understanding of how all the various stakeholders feel about this, I had a chance to speak with Nancy, whose married name I can't think of, but maiden name Beals, sister of Whit Beals. And then after the meeting, and then in the following week, I met with PM Estes, who's Whit Beals' widow, and she actually met her at her house, and we had a lovely discussion. And I can tell you the perspective from the Beals family is that they are obviously stakeholders in this. They negotiated the conservation restriction. They did it in good faith. They expected that the town was operating in good faith, and they expected at the time that the town would be enforcing the document that was agreed upon by everybody. So that's perspective from the Beals family. So we may be getting some pressure from at least one member of the select board to not enforce certain elements of the conservation restriction, just so folks are aware. would be happy to go to the town council's office hours, and get some, direct feedback from him about this topic and report back in if the commission feels that would be helpful, or if somebody wanted to come with me, that'd be even better.
Oh, I have like in my mind, it's our job to be like the CR police to an extent, right?
Yes,
Or not right, but in my mind, like that's our responsibility as the Conservation Commission to is
the CR is under our care and control, so we handle the ownership duties for the town of Southborough of the conservation restriction.
Is there like aren't we like the CR police at the end of the day?
Yes.
We're the ones who are supposed to be.
The parallel that this raised in my mind, honestly, was if we were to fail in our duty, I think it would be similar to when I think, Mark, you're the only one who was here during this time, but when the ZBA several years ago, I think failed the abutters to the Park Central project and produced a decision that was flawed, and the town simply walked away from it and refused to set things right, and it was left to the abutting property owners who had standing to take this to court. And they spent, I'm told, between the two citizens groups, the legal fees approached $1 million. I would feel sick if we shirked our duties and it fell to abutting property owners, the Beals family, and any others who had standing in the community, to take this on themselves to get the CR, enforced if we were to not live up to our responsibility. So,
Well, I think Liz is spot on, right? The conservation restriction police is us.
right.
Like
Right.
there isn't a state level entity that's watching over it. Granted, fine, but we are that overseeing policing board.
Yeah, and I should say, I can't recall if you used the phrase CR police or but I think that the intent was there's no sort of authority that oversees the whole works. And you're right, we are that authority.
We absolutely are. And I remember when the CR was being created, that, a number of years ago, I was on the board then as well. But I mean, we had, lawyers involved on our board at that time. Rhonda Russian, for example,
Yeah.
she was very involved in making sure that the wording and the coverage and everything was done correctly, along with the Beals and other citizens of the town. And I think it's our responsibility to uphold that.
I learned something really interesting from Pam Estes. The town so this, of course, it's an interest in real property, so to purchase it, the town meeting needed a 2/3 vote to purchase it. The turnout for this town meeting, it is my understanding, still remains as the largest turnout for any town meeting in the town's history. And when the vote was held, the vote to purchase this conservation restriction, this document that we have, imperfect though it may be in certain ways, the vote was unanimous, which is just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing. So I think there's a clear mandate from that town meeting to, that this is the town's CR and we need to enforce it. There is a mechanism to change it if the trustees want to pursue that. And I would encourage them to do that if they feel that change is necessary, to go through part of that procedure involves going back to the most important authority here, which is town meeting.
Mhm.
The other thing is, last time the trustees were here, they were very clear that they were not asking for the CR to be changed. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a little surprising that we're still talking about it. Yeah, truthfully.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I felt like there are maybe some things that I was unaware of. There, may have been some conversations or things in context that that I'm just unaware of, and I didn't feel like I was hearing necessarily the whole picture. Not in any malicious way, but I just haven't been part of every single conversation. So that's the report from the Chestnut Hill Farm meeting.
So Ben, back to the farming aspect of it.
Yes.
You think they're going to be able to secure a farming oversight for this season?
It's difficult to say. It sounds like the hope is certainly to get a tenant farmer onto the property this year. And there'll be a certain amount of gearing up that may take place this year. I don't know how much agriculture would actually take place during this growing season, but certainly the hope is absolutely by next growing season. Melissa, is that how you heard it as well?
Yes, yeah, I think they were hoping to put out their request for proposals in, by the end of January, it sounded like. They didn't think it would necessarily be an easy process. It's definitely making sure, they did stress upon this is a property that's open to the public, so they need to make sure that they find a farmer that is willing to work with the public, that is open to people coming up to them and asking questions, because the trustees will still be holding, their events in the barn. So that, area will still be kind of utilized as trustee educational space, but the rest of the property will be maintained agriculturally. So making sure that they find a farmer, that can work with that balance was important to them, it sounded like. And they did say that they'd be willing to send that draft RFP to us and Sudbury Valley trustees. So hopefully we do see that before it goes out. But because, they have some pros, and cons, it's not a huge property, but they also have housing that's available, which isn't very common on a lot of other farms. So they're hoping that they have enough there that will entice a good farmer. What the makeup would look like. There were also some neighbors there. Some were interested in agriculture or livestock, some weren't. But so the makeup of what actually will be done at the farm kind of is still in the unknown until they choose that farmer. So the goal is to at least have someone in contract, I think, by this year and start to do the prep work for next year. In the meantime, the trustees are still keeping up with their native hedgerows and some of their pollinator areas. So that is still remaining in effect until they get kind of the full agricultural aspect going. So they're still working on their agroecology. So they're hoping to at least have someone on the farm this year, but probably not in production until next.
Okay. Well, progress.
It is, like I said, I think it was overwhelmingly good news. I think this has a great chance of success.
Yeah, and the nonprofit Land for Good has a very, very good reputation. They both work with farmers and landowners trying to, work with farmers to try and find property, but both landowners to try and find a farmer for their property. I know SVT works with them as well. They're ironically hosting a kind of farmland expose per se for local farmers in the area with Land for Good. I think next month. I just saw that come through in an email. So, I've talked to other farmers out where I live, and they're aware of this nonprofit. So I'm glad that they have chosen a reputable path. I think, it's definitely an organization this is what they do to bring farming, an appropriate farming practice to the property. So I have great hopes. I think they're definitely trying more in the background than we kind of initially thought on this aspect. So hopefully they get some good proposals back and they can assess them as they come in.
Well, good. Well, thank you for the update. That's encouraging news. Excuse me. See, so next for newer continued business, 250 Turnpike Road. This is a comment letter to ZBA for the 40B.
Yes. So I put together kind of what I would consider some minimal comments, and I can share them up on the screen in a moment. I think I started to really review the plans, and then we got peer review letters back from Lucas Environmental as the wetland peer reviewer, and Howard Stein Hudson as the civil. And I think they also got their traffic review as well back that I looked at quickly today. But the the civil engineering from Howard Stein Hudson, their report is over like 30 pages. It calls out a lot of comments. So instead of kind of me hashing out kind of page by page the plans, I think that company, Howard Stein Hudson, did a phenomenal job in outlining it item by item. So in reality, I ended at about 10 comments and I pulled out kind of the most important ones that I saw. So kind of at first go, I started with the wetland side of things. One thing that we have discussed past in both the ORAD and for our notice of intent during the self-storage aspect of, or the contractors building, was the vernal pool habitat and some of those detention basins. So, in looking, and thankfully Chris Lucas and his team had been a part of that process and had reviewed kind of the existing studies that had been done and assessments on the vernal pools, and believe that there's more that could be done, especially with this new development that they're proposing. So kind of harping on a lot about the vernal pools. Lucas had pulled out, a recommendation about doing an appropriate assessment of wildlife habitat and corridors related to the vernal pool, and I kind of explicitly wrote require. There is a lot of work that is happening within the 20-foot no touch and adjacency to these basins that could contain or do contain, that we know of, vernal pool habitat. There's a lot of retaining walls around these resource areas that could prevent wildlife movement. So I think it's really important for us to kind of stress that it's not just a recommendation. This is something that is important under our bylaw and shouldn't just be ignored. It's also an opportune time considering we're coming up upon March. So wouldn't cause a delay in timeline, especially considering the amount of potential revisions that need to be done. So I think it's more than appropriate to include that in this comment letter, that's an important aspect for the commission. So just kind of further harping on, that the studies would basically allow us to determine if there's going to be a potential loss of habitat, which is a protection, under our bylaw. And there's a lot of just work in the 20-foot in general. There are some retaining walls that come up very close to the edge of the wetland areas. There's structures, there's lawns within them, a lot more so than in other applications we've seen under 40Bs especially. So kind of identifying, and they should better explain why these encroachments into the 20-foot are necessary, and just a general bylaw waiver kind of isn't appropriate. I throughout my process in reviewing these, a big part of what I pull out of the comprehensive permit regulations for ZBA is that, they have to prove that this bylaw is necessary because it makes it economically infeasible if not. And I don't see that really demonstrated. I know that's not necessarily our jurisdiction to discuss per se, but, I think it's important when they're asking for these blanket waivers, especially in this case with this extensive work in the 20-foot, both during construction and maintained lawn, etc. after the fact, including in vernal pool habitat. So, vernal pool is kind of what I talked about the most. And then the rest was really just talking, kind of agreeing with the Howard Stein Hudson letters and recommendations. They go through both our stormwater bylaw, which is only a couple paragraphs basically saying that they just need to comply with those requirements and they don't see them, but also under just the general site plan context, they go down towards the stormwater standards and the items that are missing. So kind of reiterating that, and that they need to, list how these waivers are being requested in the relevant sections. And then, my last comment was just kind of summarizing that, it is our opinion that this information is important and it hasn't been provided, and the lack of these documents, don't allow us to determine if these waivers are appropriate, especially the vernal pool habitat. So I you know, instead of doing kind of the in-depth at this point, I think the engineers did a great job, and I really think we need that information first before we kind of get into more technical comments, because even the state regulations haven't been met in a lot of circumstances, let alone the local bylaws. So I've kind of started with this, and I think this was kind of the basic good first letter to send to ZBA stating, hey, we've read the peer review letters, we agree, and you definitely should require, you know, these specific things now, but, you know, there's a whole slew of things that also need to be addressed before we can further comment. That's the gist of it.
Oh, and what I've reviewed, I find that the plans and so forth are a complete disregard of buffer zones in general. Complete disregard. That building up to the edge of wetlands, and I think that we'll have an ongoing, you know, discussion about where the wetland lines are with respect to, you know, the development and that sort of thing. But, you know, one of the reasons why we put a bylaw in place for the 20-foot, you know, no touch or restrictive zone or whatever you want to call it, was because we had properties in Southborough where, you know, they would build a house and then would put the deck on, and the deck, you know, sonotube pylons would be right at the edge of the wetland, right? There'd be no backyard, right? There'd be no protection. So, I mean, my opinion and view of the plans is it's been a complete disregard of buffer zones in its entirety. Which, you know,
I agree with you, Mike. There are buildings, you know, more than halfway through the 20-foot no touch shown on the plans. There are townhouses that are 10 feet away from the edge of the wetland.
and then there's lawn up to the wetland.
Right. Yeah.
Right, and, you know, we've, you know, been pretty steadfast in our rulings over the years where we ask people to put, you know, markers, right? And the word escapes me for what the marker is off the top of my head. They stick them in the ground.
Pheno stakes.
Thank you, pheno stakes. You know, put those in the ground to keep people from you know, mowing within that 20 foot, and, you know, building horseshoe pits or whatever they would want to use there, right? So I you know, this is just again a complete disregard of buffer zone protection. So from that standpoint, Melissa, I think your letter is good to the ZBA.
Would
Do
you
you
like
think
me-
that they're going to be able to understand the magnitude of this?
That's kind of what I'm thinking as I'm looking at this again. I think it would be, if you guys are comfortable, adding another comment kind of to your effect, Mark, you know, that the commission, you know, holds firm that the protection of the 20-foot buffer zone, you know, throughout Southborough is important. And the extensive and additional work, you know, both ongoing and in perpetuity within the 20-foot, you know, is known to cause a detriment to the wetland resource areas. I think that would be an appropriate comment to put in, just to reiterate that, you know, yes, there's more information needed, but right off the bat, we have a really hard time digesting this.
And where we have allowed waivers, it's been for a small encroachment in return for something that is beneficial somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Invasive species removal or additional you know, replication or things like that, right? We just haven't said, okay, have at it. You know,
Right.
so it's always been you know, a trade-off, right? We give a little, you give back a little, that sort of thing. There's no giving back here.
Most of the time, we grant the waivers for temporary disturbance within the 20 feet. I mean, that's the most common waiver that we grant within the 20 feet, but this is just an outward abuse of the entire 20-foot zone. It will, without question, have a detrimental effect on the wetland and its habitat value. I think, Melissa, your idea for 11th comment, I fully support it.
Even use Park Central as an example, right? I mean, they went back to the drawing board many times to do redesigns to be able to protect that 20-foot.
And detrimental effect on the wetland by encroaching on the buffer zone means that they're also violating the Wetlands Protection Act, right? So it doesn't matter about the local bylaw necessarily, right? They're still bound by the state one, so we could still find that, they're impacting the wetlands too much. So
Especially with whatever information comes in about the vernal pools, may tend to support that even more strongly, to your point, Kevin.
Now, even, with a 40B application, you still have to meet the state stormwater
Yeah.
regulations.
Yeah, and there were a few comments about that as well, and just kind of conflicting drainage patterns and not correct drainage areas that were being shown or utilized within the calc. So, I think there's just a lot more work that needs to be done. And it's sometimes frustrating to try and review these plans that just aren't there. But to see so much and not be there, I know it's a weird thing to say, but there's a lot going on in the plan, and it doesn't make sense all the time. Nothing really connects the correct way. So it's hard to really make these comments besides saying like, hey, the obvious ones of there's a lot of work within our jurisdictional areas, let alone our 20-foot, but buffer zone in general with known vernal pool habitat, probably more, we have more teeth under the bylaw with the vernal pool aspect than the state regs, but just I think as Kevin was getting to in general, under the Wetlands Protection Act and what Ben was saying about the placement of some of these structures, they're right up to the edges. And I can't imagine that some of, foundation drains or other things are going to be discharging to wetlands, which just isn't allowed. So I think they have a lot to go back to the drawing board, but the commission making a pretty firm statement that, it's a lot within the 20-foot, and we don't typically do that. So I have notes to add.
And we don't ever do that.
We don't ever do
Not
that.
typically, ever.
Yeah. So it's like, so I'll add some notes about the encroachments into the 20-foot and how typically the only waivers are for minimal or temporary aspects with provided mitigation, which has clearly not been provided. And then a note to look at the Park Central and back for redesign, so it's not an uncommon ask.
Yeah, I can't, since we had the bylaw in place, I can't think of any time we've allowed anybody to build right up into the edge. And give them permission to do that and leave it as such, right? I mean, as Ben pointed out, there's been temporary disturbances. We may have allowed a couple of feet here or there and get something in return, but not to this magnitude.
Yeah, especially not for new construction, for sure.
So,
All right. I will finesse that. I can't remember off the top of my head when the next hearing for this one is, but I'll send you guys all an update in case you want to tune in. But I will add kind of those. I might break it into 1 or 2 comments for that aspect, but I'll send those in probably on Monday.
okay. And is that the end of our agenda? Because I do have something I wanted to bring up.
I don't have a thing.
What's that?
I said I don't have anything else.
Oh, so the gas pipe work on Route 9. So at the corner of Parkerville Road and Route 9, where they were parking a lot of their light stanchions and things like that.
Yep.
Even though it's going to get colder now and it's going to freeze, they left a mess in terms of ruts and that sort of thing. I don't know if you've been by there and seen it.
Yes, they were made aware when they first did it. I think in the spring they're going to rake it out and put some new meadow mix down.
Okay, because there's nothing on the other side of that to protect anything. It's all country drainage in Parkerville Road there.
Yep.
It does come around the corner from Route 9. And that drain does the best job it can at the corner, but
Oh, Parkerville or Middle?
Parker.
Okay, I know I'm thinking Middle. Okay, I'll take a look at Parkerville.
Yeah, right there across the street from the truck that's growing stuff out of its truck bed on the side of the road.
Got it. Okay, I'll take a look at that one.
That's
Thank
been
you.
there forever. But on the other side of Parkerville Road, where the guide rail ends there, they parked a lot of stuff there. It's all rutted. And they,
Okay.
you know, and just down the other side of the hill from that is the brook,
Right.
right? And there's no protection there or anything. And now that I can get out of the house every now and again, I saw that.
Okay. I'll add that
So-
to my list. I know I knew the middle road one, but I missed the Parker.
Yeah, I didn't see the Villa Road.
So when because it was quick, it was when they first started at where they've mowed kind of that meadow at 206, 200 next to Long Cadillac on Middle.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So they had pushed the erosion controls back and staged all their equipment there. So when I did the pre-construction erosion control inspection, I was like, what are you doing? You even labeled this a wetland. So they pulled everything out and they had to find somewhere else to stage their stuff because I guess that's what they were having trouble with, is just finding space.
Well, here, there is no erosion controls,
Okay.
right? So they didn't have to move them.
Yeah,
They just parked
they just
and,
did it.
yeah,
Okay.
and made a rutted mess there.
All right.
So,
Well, send them a note. They've been very responsive, so I'm sure they'll get on that.
not to mention the awesome paving job they did on Route 9.
I saw that today. I
I
saw
don't know. My 2-year-old grandson could have done better, I think.
Give me a Tonka truck. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways,
All right.
all right. Thank you for hearing me out there.
No, thank you.
Anything else?
Me.
All
Okay.
right. Well, happy 2025, everyone.
Thank you.
Yay.
I'll do the motion.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Again.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato. Oh, Mark, we didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yummy? Yes,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
I was like, he wasn't letting us go.
Did it not work?
Yeah. All right, guys.
right.
Have a great night.
Guys,
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.